This is the Roots and All podcast, here to help you get growing. Join us as we explore everything plant-related, both indoors and out, and provide the information you need to create your perfect green environment. Presented by Sarah Wilson.
Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Roots and All podcast. This is a subject that's been much requested. This week I'm speaking to Jason Stevens, who owns a shop called Simply Garden. The shop sells all things garden related, but it's fair to say the majority of the indoor space is given over to houseplants of all shapes, sizes and varieties, so Jason is experienced in dealing with a wide range of plants. In the interest of full disclosure, Jason is my partner, which simply means I felt free to ask him more difficult questions and give him a harder time than I might other guests. So without further ado, here is Jason. So, Jason, thank you for joining me on the podcast. And my first question to you is, how did you get into working with plants?
There are many different reasons why I've got into houseplants. The main one being I was medically discharged from the army after 16 years in 2015. And while I was doing my rehab in Headley Court, I got into gardens indoor and out. I love the well-being in the garden and the mental health that it gives you. So yeah, I thought I'd try it out. I designed a garden and built a garden, which took me a long period of time, and decided that I wasn't physically able to carry on with the outdoor gardening thing. So I moved into houseplants, and now I have a lovely shop in the old town in Hastings. I still have days where I can't go in because of ongoing treatment, but when I am there, I do put in as much effort as possible.
So, being surrounded by plants in your lovely shop, you could probably tell me what is the easiest houseplant to look after?
Everyone's different, but I find myself that ferns are so easy to look after. It's recommended that everyone has a plant that's as easy to look after, but the easiest one that I sell would be the aspidistra. It's hard as nails, can take a really good beating. If you get to water it, it doesn't mind too much. It's also known as the cast iron plant for good reason. It came from East India and China, and there are about 101 different species of aspidistra at the moment, and they're great. And there's even people in the southeast of England that have got them outside in their gardens and they're thriving, so it's absolutely brilliant plant.
And I know that in the shop you do have people who come in and ask you what is the best plant for a sunny windowsill or for a conservatory. I know this is probably a difficult situation for a plant, but what would you recommend?
You're right, it is a very difficult situation for a plant. There aren't very many plants out there that like direct light all the time, especially in the searing heat that we've just had. But a very popular plant that's near impossible to kill, and I say near impossible to kill because you can kill anything, I would say is the mother-in-law's tongue, or it's also known as snake plant. Anything that's sharp and can hurt you is generally named after the mother-in-law. So, yeah, this is a good one. It's the ideal specimen for the people that are new to houseplants because it's so hard to kill. If you're busy with other plants, then that's a great one to have in the background. It really is.
Okay, and I know that another plant or a situation that people struggle with is tucked away in a shady corner of a room. And what do you recommend people get for that situation?
These are questions I must get asked 10 times a day in the shop. I think that any fern should do great in a more shadier area, but the best plant for a shady area would be the califia, sometimes known as a rattlesnake plant due to its markings. But most places do mislabel it as a prayer plant, as in the plant that closes up at night and opens up during the day. It's definitely not a prayer plant. It should be kept out of direct sunlight and should be always moist, but never sitting with its feet wet, and should be misted all the time. They love humidity, so it's a great plant for a shady area of the house.
Okay, and talking of humidity, what plant would do well in a bathroom where people were kind of taking frequent showers or baths and the air was getting fairly humid?
There are so many different types of ferns out there that would love it in a bathroom, but I've got to admit my favourite would be a really large Boston fern. It's best to keep it in indirect light, somewhere that's cool, that has humidity. So a bathroom's great, but make sure that when you do put it in a bathroom, it's not kept in your main bathroom if you've got an ensuite, because you use your ensuite more. So if you do put it in the main bathroom in that situation, you will definitely have to mist it more often than not, because it's not getting daily use, as in the bathroom, it's not getting daily use.
So what is a good plant for a bedroom?
There are many plants that are great in bedrooms, but they will all take extra care because obviously you only go in your bedroom generally to sleep. But there are many plants that are great for producing extra oxygen in the home. I think the best plants for your bedroom really would be something like the rubber plant or the mother-in-law's tongue, aloe vera or a weeping fig. But my favourite out of everything has to be the peace lily. It's got lovely pink flowers or white flowers, generally white, but you can get the pink variety. Every time a flower goes brown, just let it go completely brown, then remove it and it will replace the flowers in time. It's hard to put a peace lily on a watering schedule because they're very infrequently watered. So just check it every week, and if it's dry, give it a water and go from there.
And how would you check whether it needed watering?
This is the easy one for me. I literally use my index finger and I put my index finger in right to the base. And if I feel that it's wet, then it doesn't need watering. If I can't feel any moisture, then it needs watering.
You don't put your finger right into the base, do you?
Top of the soil.
Yeah, I was going to say...
to the base of my finger, not to the base of the plant.
To the base of my finger. You've got incredibly long fingers if that's what you do.
Very long fingers.
I use your ET index finger to check for water.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, I've got a hanging pot and I want a plant that will trail down just like I've seen on Instagram. What would be a good trailing plant for me?
Oh, Instagram has got to be the bane of a plant shop owner's life because everyone's got great pictures on Instagram. There must be people out there that put all their plants into the conservatory, take a picture, then put them back where they actually belong afterwards. They take great pictures, but it's really hard with Instagram because people look at that and think they can reproduce it. There are many plants that you can have that hang in, but my favourite one has to be the string of hearts. The real name is Ceropegia woodii or Ceropegia woodii. It's a string of hearts. It's a lovely trailing succulent plant. It's native to South Africa, Swaziland and Zimbabwe. It's quite hardy. It requires very, very little maintenance. Literally always water it from the bottom, never from the top. And you can put it in front of a sunny windowsill, high on a shelf, and take full advantage of the way that it drops down and keeps growing. It also has a really exquisite purple flower. It's a great hanging plant, personally.
And talking of flowers then, a lot of plants are noted for their foliage that are grown indoors. Are there any plants that will flower for a longer period of time?
There are a few. You can't go wrong with an orchid. Or you can go for something a little bit different like the anthurium. They do generally flower for about 9 months. You've got to let whatever colour the anthurium may be, you've got to let it go completely brown, cut it off and it just re-sprouts and keeps going for about 9 months. They're really nice plants. But my favourite has to be the orchid. They're just a little bit more difficult to look after.
Obviously, when I buy a plant, it'll come in a plastic pot, but I do like to put my plants in a nice pot. Is it possible for me to take the plant out of the plastic pot that it comes in and put it directly into a ornamental container, such as a ceramic pot?
I don't think there's any need to repot your plant straight away. Most plants should come to you in great condition. You should never buy a plant that needs to be repotted straight away because, let's be honest, it's been there for far too long. Unless, obviously, that plant needs to be pot bound. Say the ZZ plant, for example, loves to be pot bound. So it is going to look like it needs repotting, but it doesn't. But you should never really repot straight into a ceramic pot, purely because there's no drainage. When it comes to watering of plants, for me, you should always water from underneath. You can't do that in a ceramic pot with no holes in. And the old wives' tale of putting some pebbles in the bottom and that will help. I find that it's not true. It may be true, but I find that it's not.
I don't think it is actually. I've seen some experiments online where people have actually shown pictures where they've put a layer of gravel or grit at the bottom of the pot and they've done it in a transparent container and you can see that the water just sits in the soil. It doesn't actually manage to cross the barrier into the heavier aggregate. So I think actually that is probably, a scientifically true statement as well.
You do get a lot of people that still insist on doing it. You can't stop them, obviously. It's going to take more effort for the plant to survive and the correct watering for it to work. You can if you want to, but I would always recommend to keep it in a plastic pot. And then when you do repot maybe 2 or 3 centimetre bigger pot every time and then replace that into a ceramic pot.
Also, is there anything else that I need to kind of consider when I get my plant home after I've bought it? If I don't need to repot it, what else should I be doing to kind of make sure that it gets a good start in my home?
To be honest with you, the first thing you need to think about when you're buying a plant is how you're actually going to get it home. And the shop should help you along the way with this. There are many things to think about when you take it home, like how long is it going to be sat in the car for? Have I brought it at the beginning of the day? Should I have brought it at the end? If you buy it and you're going to be shopping in that town for a long time, purchase it and ask the person in the shop to look after it, and they should have no problems in looking after it until you collect it. Just remember to collect it, because the amount of things that people forget to collect from my shop at the end of the day is unbelievable. But generally 90% of them do come back the next day or phone you to say they forgot it. You've also got to think about the wind. So the way that it's packed, obviously it's a houseplant, so it doesn't like to be in the wind and have too much brushing against it, etc. So make sure it's well packed to keep the wind off. It's not blowing all over the place. And rain in this country, we love a bit of rain. So make sure that it's covered and that rain can't get on the plant, etc. And also what time of year you're buying it. If it's cold outside, you've got to go straight home with that plant. You can't buy it and then go shopping for the rest of the day with it in a bag. You can't go and have a drink in the pub on the way home. You've literally got to buy it, get in the car, get in the taxi, get on the train or the tube and get it home as soon as possible. So it goes from one nice area where it's kept lovely and straight home where you're going to do the same thing. But buying houseplants is a difficult decision, but exposure to the elements can have a really detrimental effect. And every shopkeeper worth their salt should tell you how to get it home or offer a solution to get it there, whether they can deliver it for a small fee or even for free, it's even better, or whether they can pack it for you better to get it home.
Once I've got it home, I think probably in terms of getting it off to a good start, I think the key thing there is to actually already have a spot in mind as to where you're going to put it. I know it's really easy to get caught up in the moment in a lovely plant shop and end up buying 3 or 4 plants and then getting them home and trying to shoehorn them into the room that you have. But I do think actually if you could get the right spot for the plant to start with, that's kind of half the battle won, isn't it?
Oh, that is a major part of the battle won. In fact, I had yesterday just in the shop, a gentleman came in to buy 5 or 6 plants for his house, knew exactly where he wanted them, but I only got him to buy 3 that day and come back when I'm back in on Wednesday to go through the next ones that he wants to buy, purely because he wasn't sure on, one, the size of the pot that it's got to go in, so he's restricted to what he can buy, obviously in size, and 2, exactly the position he wanted to go for. So I always do say to people, either take a picture of the room where it's going to be, a picture of the position where you want it, and show me, and we can advise on that. But sometimes the heart rules ahead and something looks absolutely fantastic and people will buy it because it looks fantastic. They'll get it home and they won't have space for it. If that's the case, then you've really got to do your research, or the person in the shop should be telling you all the information you need to know, so you know where to put it when you get home. And if you have to move something else out of a place to get it there, then you can. But what I would say is don't get it home, put it somewhere, see how well it does, and move it. Doesn't do well there, so you move it again and you keep moving it. It's like backwards and forwards. Put it in a spot, leave it there for a couple of weeks, see how it does. If it doesn't do well in that spot, then you definitely do need to move it, but just move it once or twice. Don't keep moving it, trying to get into the perfect spot, because the plant's going to be in shock from all the moves and it's going to die.
I think that's another problem that you have in the shop. Well, if people report problems to you, quite often it's that they've got their plant home and it's started to shed leaves or it's dropped a few leaves and people will panic over that. Is there a reason for that happening when they first get the plant home?
It's literally the shock of the move. So obviously they're happy in our shop, and then they move to your house, whether it be 10 minutes or 10 hours away. It doesn't matter. Being moved to a new location is going to have an effect on the plant. So it's going to go into shock initially. So it's going to lose a few leaves, might lose some leaves from the bottom. It may even have new growth, and then that new growth dies straight away. That is literally the plant just getting used to the new surroundings, and it's perfectly normal. If it dropped all the leaves, I'd be worried. If it drops a couple, there's nothing to be worried about.
Right, so this is going to be a question that I think is probably impossible to answer, but you've got your ET finger, you've stuck it in the pot and you've ascertained that your plant does need watering. How much water does it need?
That is a question I can't answer. Every plant is different. Every plant requires more or less water than others. The way I do it is in the shop, everything needs watering at different times. So I have alarms that go off on different days that tell me what plants need watering, because obviously I buy things on different days. But at home, and I've heard this on the internet as well and on some previous podcasts as well, there's a thing called a pool party. And that's to train all your plants to need watering on one day. So if they need on a Wednesday, move them to a couple of weeks at a time, move them by a day at a time until they all need watering on one certain day, and then put some water in the bath and put them in the bath. And then you can bath them, you can shower them, which gives them a good clean as well. And then you're literally not spending your whole week watering on different days. It's just one day out of your life, and it's maybe an hour, and you watering, you're cleaning, you're doing everything you need to for your plants, and you're putting them all back, and it's perfectly fine. But as for how much to water a plant, only you can tell.
Okay. So I've had a few questions from people to ask you, and one of them is, how do I manage to kill cacti? They seem to be fairly indestructible. But
They are indestructible, but you'll be, obviously, the amount of people that come into the shop and say, I've managed to kill my cacti. There's two reasons I can think of why people kill their cacti. One is overwatering and watering from the top. If you overwater it, you're giving it too much water, it's going to rot the base, rot the roots, and it's going to fall over and collapse. If you water from the top, then you're going to get water onto the cacti, and it's probably going to rot because it's not going to dry off. Or the conditions that it's in, it's just not happy with, whether it's got a small draft on a windowsill. Everyone loves to buy cacti to go on a windowsill, and they have an old house that has leaky windows and it gets a draft and then it just falls over, or it rots from the inside because it's getting a draft. It's not impossible to kill cacti. It's hard to kill cacti, but it's definitely not impossible.
okay, so don't beat yourself up too much if you've managed to do that. I've also got a question from Hannah, who asks, why do the leaves keep dropping off my bonsai?
Hannah, the leaves keep dropping off your bonsai genuinely for two reasons. It's because you have brought a deciduous tree. I think I've said that correctly. Deciduous tree.
Deciduous.
That's the one. So a bonsai can lose its leaves. The main reason will be that it's a deciduous tree, and over the winter months it naturally loses its leaves. If it's a summer month and it's losing its leaves, then you've got to be worried, and it's generally because you're not watering enough. Bonsais love to be wet all the time, and a lot of bonsais as well like to be kept outside. So you may have an outdoor bonsai and you're trying to keep it indoors, and the central heating's having an effect on it, etc. Don't be worried about it. Literally just either, if it's dry, water it. If it's over the winter, don't be worried about it. But I would move it outside under cover and leave it there over the winter, and then next year it'd be absolutely fine. But if you don't want it to lose its leaves, don't buy a deciduous tree.
They're not always that well labelled, so it is a bit of a minefield, I have to say.
They are.
So how often shall I feed my plants, and with what?
Now, this is a personal opinion, but I think that all plants should be fed every fourth watering, and every watering should be relatively around a week long. Some plants are a little bit longer, some a little bit less, but the person you're buying them from should be able to advise you whether it's 1, 2 or 4 weeks, etc. But every fourth water on houseplants, it should be fed. I use a thing called Houseplant Focus. I did a lot of research into houseplant food, and I absolutely love their products. I stock them in my shop, and it's the only thing that I recommend to people. So they have the Houseplant Focus, and they also have a Palm Focus, an Orchid Focus, etc. But the best thing for me is, and I always try and do it, I try and do it with all my plants and all the stuff in the shop as well, is I try and buy British where possible. And they are a British company, and you've got to support British companies, definitely.
Okay. So, do plants really purify the air? Because there's a lot of marketing chat about this at the moment.
There is a lot of marketing chat about it. I would say that all houseplants have the ability to remove certain types of pollution from the air. Doesn't mean they do, they just have the ability to do it. Some are more effective than others, but my favourite one's got to be the peace lily that, you know, in the bedroom is great. And if you're going to university, and it's probably not in your first year, I wouldn't buy a peace lily because you're too busy doing other things. But in your second year, when you're actually studying, a peace lily in your bedroom or in your dorm room will help you with studying because it does purify the air around it.
There's been studies conducted that show that having green plants in your immediate environment when you're working or studying do actually improve your concentration and your information retention, that kind of thing. So I think, again, that is actually a proven fact.
Definitely. You've hit the nail on the head there. For me, it is absolutely brilliant being surrounded by plants all day long. I absolutely love it. Mental health wise, it's absolutely brilliant. Well-being wise is great. So I can see the benefits from a mental health side. I can see the benefit from a studying side. If I do read a book, which isn't very often, if I do it in a room full of plants, you're obviously, you're going to take a little bit more in. I don't know why, but you just do.
Okay. Well, if it helps you, then all good. So the other question I've got is, should I mist my plants?
So most plants love to be misted. They're used to a certain level of humidity where they come from, so it should be misted as often as possible. I think the top one in particular is ferns. They need to be misted once or twice a day, and that's the way you keep them looking fresh. Everyone says to me, oh, how do you keep your Boston ferns looking so good? And it is generally through misting, not just the watering, but the misting of it as well. When I do mist it as well, I mix in a little bit of houseplant food in my mix, and I mist it with that. Asparagus ferns, notoriously hard to keep. They really are. But if you mist them, water them regularly, let them completely dry out and then water them again. That's just personal. That's what I do. Let them completely dry out and then water them again, and they absolutely thrive. But misting your plants should be done with all plants near enough. But anything that's furry doesn't like to be misted.
Or cacti or succulents?
I wouldn't miss my cacti or succulents. There are UK hardy succulents that you can get, and they don't mind being misted, but there's no point.
I have to say that when I had my cacti and succulents in my conservatory, I did used to mist them daily when I was doing everything else, and they never suffered any detrimental effects. So I think there's probably a lot of old wives' tales and folklore surrounding houseplants that some of it's not necessarily true. Our next question is, should I use leaf shine? Now, you spoke about your pool party with your plants, and obviously when you're giving them a shower in the bath, you're probably washing off any dust and things that's accumulated on the leaves. Would you also use a leaf shine?
Personally, no. You can use leaf shine, but most experts ultimately agree as well, that it could be harmful to your plants. But it is very conflicting. There are people that are for it and people that are against it. But realistically, your houseplant should just be cleaned regularly. It should be bathed if possible. And you should always use a dry, clean cloth. Grandma swears by it, and I do it, and I think it's absolutely great. Using a bit of milk and tepid water to make your leaf shines a little bit better. It takes a little bit longer, but it works for me. And if it works for you, then do it. But if it doesn't work for you, then don't do it. My own personal opinion, if you go into a plant shop and it's covered in all the plants are really shiny and you touch them and you can feel that silicone type thing, then walk away. If they have to do that to their houseplants in the shop, then imagine what it's going to look like when that runs off and it goes home. I wouldn't purchase it personally.
And I know people recommend watering your houseplants with rainwater. Again, is that correct, and why?
Yeah, it is correct. If you've got rainwater and you can do it, then water them with rainwater. Always use rainwater if possible. The plants aren't used to the extra chemicals and stuff that we have in our water. Then they're not used to it. But if it's not available, then use distilled water. Or even if you use normal tap water, the plants get used to it in the end. It just has that little effect on them at the beginning, and then it gets used to it. It gets used to all the stuff. But don't use house water or tap water on your carnivorous plants. It's always got to be rainwater.
So, what are the most common pests and diseases that you come across on your plants, and how do you treat them?
I'm going to come on to how I treat them at the end. I just think that there are too many to list, to be honest with you, but I'm going to go for my top 5. So first of all, you've got like the aphid. It's a common to indoor and outdoor plants, and they're sap-sucking insects, and they like to feed off the sap. You've also got the fungus gnat. Both the larva and the adult stage of this small plant pest can cause big problems for houseplants. Then you've got mealybug, which is generally what most people will see. These plant-sucking pests are familiar problems in the greenhouses and in gardens as well, but mainly on your indoor plants. You can control mealybugs naturally, and again, we'll come on to that again in a second. Spider mites, tiny, tiny, tiny sucking pests. They quickly wreak havoc on your indoor plants. They really can. So the quicker you spot it and the quicker you deal with it, the better. And then thrip. There are 6,000 different species of thrip, and they're from plants from all over the world. So if you've got them, you're not alone, trust me. There are many different ways to deal with them. The one that I would recommend would be to use a tiny little bit of washing up liquid in the water, and then spray it on and wipe the pest off, checking that the soil's not being contaminated as well. If that has been, then you need to deal with that separately. If I have to go down the route of using something, then I'm going to use an SB invigorator that kills your pests and actually gives nutrients to the plants at the same time. But I personally don't recommend using anything chemical wise or anything like that. So I really can't answer the question in that way. So I'm really sorry about that. But if I don't believe in it, I'm not going to tell people to do it.
That's fine. I admire your principles. Obviously, you get a wide variety of plants in your shop. And in your experience, what do you think are the most difficult houseplants to look after? So people can either steer clear of them or purposely seek them out if they want a challenge.
There are many different types of plants that are difficult to look after. I always try and tell people that's a beginner plant or an intermediate plant or an advanced plant. It sounds really, really weird, but one of our cheaper plants are the harder ones to look after. So things like the Sarginella, it's one of them plants, if it goes, it goes. I think with most houseplants, when they start to go, you can generally pull them back. But with a Sarginella, as soon as it starts to go, that's it, it's gone. And Sarginella, for those that don't know it, is like the indoor version of Mind Your Own Business. It's absolutely brilliant. It looks great. It's like a little green, dome-shaped, lovely plant, and it looks great in all pots, and it's just a conversation piece. I just think they're notoriously difficult to look after. We've actually got a woman that comes back every 3 months to get another one because she manages to kill hers. But she's got a standing order for them. It's great. Carnivorous plants are notoriously difficult to look after, not because they're hard to look after, it's just the way we look after them. If people haven't got access to rainwater and they use tap water, they're going to die. They start feeding them and things like that, and they start overwatering them. They don't give them enough humidity and they'll just die. So if you've got carnivorous plants, you really need to, I would say, just stick with carnivorous plants to start off with. If that's the way you want to go, carnivorous plants, there are so many varieties out there that you should just be able to do your whole room with carnivorous plants and they'll be great. But you always got to use rainwater. They don't like nutrition, the soil. They don't like to be treated nicely.
My final question is, and I'm going to put you on the spot here because I didn't send you this in advance, but what is your favourite houseplant?
Oh no, you have put me on the spot. There's loads. There's absolutely loads. I have to say it is probably the Boston fern. I don't know why. It's a bit sideshow Bobby looking, It's amazing. And I seem to have a knack with ferns that other people don't have. And yeah, I just love looking at my Boston fern. In fact, the one that I've got in my shop, I kind of put people off from buying because I just love it being I love it being there.
Yeah, it is a fantastic example, that one in your shop, and it's right in front of the counter, isn't it? So you look at it all the time. Yeah, it's
and
a lovely,
everyone
lovely
always asks
fern.
about it, and I always tell them it's a different price because I just don't want to sell it because it's so nice.
It's a
and
nice
I love
fern.
looking after it. I love taking any of the dead leaves off. I love misting it daily for a couple of times a day. It sounds really sad. I just love or putting all my effort into that Boston fern.
Has it got a name?
No, not actually on your podcast.
Right, Jason, thank you very much.
No, thank you for having me. Cheers.
Well, a big thank you to Jason. Jason's quite active on Instagram, and if you'd like to check out his account, it's simply_garden, or he's Simply Garden SW on Facebook. This episode was more an overview of houseplants, but in the future I'll be covering more specific plants in greater detail. One thing Jason mentioned in the interview is that spiky plants are sometimes named after mother-in-laws, and it turned out he was alluding to the golden barrel cactus, or Echinocactus grusonii, which is hilariously colloquially known as the mother-in-law's seat. If you look up a picture of it, you'll see why. He also mentioned fungus gnats being detrimental, but we didn't go into detail. They're not good for your plants because the young larvae can feed on the root hairs and weaken it, and they're also really annoying when they fly into your face, which apparently they do because they're attracted to CO2. Jason spoke about feeding his plants every fourth watering. This is a good maintenance dose for his plants, as when they're in the shop, he keeps watering, heat and feeding on the low side to keep the plants ticking over until they go to new homes. He doesn't want to keep repotting anything that's in stock for a few months or more. I would say check the requirements of your individual plants to see how often they need feeding. And so to announce the winner of the review competition, and the winner of a copy of the Great Dixter Cookbook is Liz from Beckenham. A massive thank you to you, Liz, for your lovely review, and I hope you enjoy the book. And thank you all for listening. Don't forget, it's really helpful to me if you can rate and review the podcast in iTunes. Also, if you listen to all the episodes of the podcast and the podcast directly from my website, which is www.rootsandall.co.uk, you can also find my blog. If you like houseplants, be sure to check out the blog on the website, where I've recently uploaded a post titled The 5 Most Overrated Houseplants. So have a great week, and I'll catch you next Tuesday.
For more information, visit the Roots and All website at rootsandall.co.uk. To download more episodes, visit iTunes, your favourite podcast provider, or get them direct from our website.